there's a minus 21%. It was made up by the construction. So kudos to everybody. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you for that. Today we have an invocation by Pastor Dennis Baker with Mount Vernon Church of Christ, and then I'll lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Is the pastor here, Sarah? Yeah.
Maybe he was a state official. Would you pray with me? Our Father in heaven, may your name be praised, and may you be recognized as the giver of all good things, and the one who brings order and peace to this chaotic world that we live in. We thank you for the good things that we experience, and we thank you for the things that challenge us and make us better people. We acknowledge that you walk with us through all of the things that we encounter. In you we live and move and have our being. Father, today we recognize the importance of the work that is done here. We ask for strong hearts and clear minds to do this important task. We often feel the need for courage, wisdom, and insight as we do the work of the people. Please impart what is needed for our leaders to maintain that sacred trust that is extended by the voters in our area. We recognize the resources of the city and the things that need to be accomplished with those resources touch every individual who lives in the city of Prescott. Indeed, the voters have put those resources in the hands of the people who have met here today to accomplish what needs to be done. And we pray that it will benefit each one of us. We pray that the proposals and the discussions have been done in good faith. We pray that the use of the resources achieves what needs to be done. We also bring before you the names of the individuals who lead in our city that are assembled here today. We pray for Greg, for Billy, for Kathy, for Steve Blair, for Phil, for Alexa, and for Steve. We pray that they will have courage, wisdom, and insight to do what is right for all the citizens. We ask that they will have relief from the burden they constantly bear for the well-being of the people in our city. We pray that they will be able to maintain the balance of public life and personal needs. We pray for their mates and families who often pay a high price when someone they love is involved in higher office. Father, forgive us for our failings, strengthen us to do our best today, and give us hope for a better tomorrow. We pray for our neighbors who are struggling with COVID-19 and give us relief and peace from our stress related to this crisis. Strengthen the first responders and protect them from this disease. And may our people find common ground and be united, as we know we are strong when we work together. Because of who you are and what you have done, may it be so. Amen.
Amen. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the United States of American flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor. Just please call roll.
Mayor Mangarelli.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Orr. Here. Councilman Blair.
Yes.
Councilman Good.
Here.
Councilmember Rusing.
Present.
Councilman Sischka.
Here.
And the record will reflect that Councilwoman Scholl's excused from the meeting.
All right, thank you for that. Let's move on to proclamations, please.
Domestic Violence Awareness Month.
Being here. So I'd like to read the proclamation. Domestic Violence Awareness Month, October 2020. Whereas domestic violence is a pattern of control in an intimate relationship where one person uses coercion and violence to gain power and control over his or her partner. And whereas domestic violence includes not only physical abuse, but also mental, emotional, and financial abuse and sexual violence. Whereas intimate partner violence affects people of all races, ages, and socioeconomic status. And whereas 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men in the U.S. have experienced violence from an intimate partner in their lifetime, and whereas 15.5 million children are exposed to domestic violence every year. Whereas violence in the home can lead to adverse health and mental health outcomes, including a higher risk of chronic disease, depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, and risky sexual and substance abuse behaviors. Whereas stress and social isolation can increase the risk of domestic violence, and whereas by working together in this community, we can break that cycle of violence. Now, therefore, the Mayor and Council of the City of Prescott does hereby proclaim the month of October as Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Would you like to speak? We'd love for you to. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, for recognizing and again approving this proclamation. This proclamation could not be more poignant as our nation grapples with COVID-19 and the isolation that was imposed in order to protect each of us from the possible deadly ramifications of the virus. Unfortunately, we have seen an increase in domestic violence within our community as well as our nation. It is likely due to the added stressors on families during this time of uncertainty. Social isolation can become a very real threat to safety. Living in fear and trauma creates the perfect storm within our bodies that have long-term effects, not only the mental well-being of the individual, but their overall physical health. Those who had previously reached out for help with domestic violence in the past may now find that their safety plans are no longer effective, and the outlets used for healing may no longer be available. By educating our citizens, we can reassure those who are surviving through domestic violence incidents. There are resources available in our community that are again open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Thank you again for your support.
All right, let's move on to the next proclamation.
Homelessness Awareness Month.
Before I read the proclamation, I would just like to ask, what is the origin and meaning of the name agape?
Agape is a Greek word for unconditional love, meaning that we unconditionally love all persons.
Homeless Awareness Month, November 2020. Whereas Prescott, Arizona joins the nation in recognizing November as Homeless Awareness Month and recognizing over 25 years, the National Coalition for the Homeless and National Student Hunger and Homelessness have sponsored educational events, and whereas each November is a month where citizens work together to share commitments, rally for honorable causes, build a stronger community, and think about other people less fortunate, and to recognize that hunger and homelessness continues to be a critical problem for many students and families in the Prescott area. And whereas Homelessness Awareness Month was established as a generosity movement, unleashing the power of people and organizations to transform their communities locally, it is a time of celebration for philanthropy and volunteerism in the city of Prescott, an opportunity to encourage citizens to serve and give to others as they are able. And whereas the intent is consistent with the activities of Agape House of Prescott to educate the public about the many reasons people are homeless, including the shortage of affordable housing in the Prescott area for very low-income residents, and to encourage support for area resources. And whereas there are very limited organizations committed to providing interim housing, life skills, training, discipleship, and case mentoring for families in crisis experiencing homelessness, such as Agape House of Prescott. And now, therefore, Be it resolved that Greg Mangarelli, Mayor of the City of Prescott, does hereby proclaim November 2020 as Homeless Awareness Month and calls upon the citizens of Prescott to give back and get involved with Agape House of Prescott in their vision of providing a pathway for independence for families in crisis. And I would just like to say I did a little homework, and I saw that you have an 86% success rate in helping our homeless families and students and individuals. And also on the agenda today, you're receiving a community development block grant in the amount of $45,000 for improvements of one of your residences. And it's also to be noted you're using all local contractors, so this money is staying in our community and helping our local contractors and their families. So thank you, and I want you to say a few things.
We just want to thank you, Mayor, each of you, and the City of Prescott for being a place that supports and loves our community in this way. We really appreciate you and loving and serving our community together. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for that. Let's move on to the consent agenda. Are there any items that any member of the council would like to pull from the consent agenda at this time?
Yes, I'd like to pull E.
Item E. Okay. Anyone else? If not, we'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move to approve consent agenda items 7A through 7O, excluding E.
Second.
Motion and second. Please vote.
Yes.
What happened to M?
Jeez, I'm sorry, Mayor.
That's all right.
So used to pushing no, I made a mistake.
You said it.
It's a 6-0.
All right. Let's go to item 7E. Councilmember Rusing.
Yes, I just had a few questions about this contract. I was confused as to the amount. It says not to exceed $90,000 over 3 years, and then it also includes the amount, an additional $30,000 a year, not to exceed $150,000. So I was just wondering how that's going to play out.
Okay. All right. Good afternoon, Mayor, Council. Yes. So as we have stated in the memo, so the initial contract is contemplated to be a 3-year period, $30,000 annually, to come up to $90,000. Then there in the contract, there's the ability to extend it for two additional 1-year terms at $30,000 each, to come to a grand total potential of spending $150,000 for the contract.
So actually a 5-year.
It's a 3-year
3
with
years
two
plus 2
1-year
more.
extensions.
Okay, and then I was reviewing the paperwork, and they're only going to be appraising vacant land, no residential or commercial structures. I was just wondering why that was going to be.
Don Hirsch, Public Works. Councilman, they will be appraising everything that the city needs done. There's prices in there for vacant land, yes.
Okay.
But there's also prices in there for things with commercial property. Depends on what the property is, but they'll do everything. He gave us some estimates on what they would be for each particular item.
Okay, because your schedule of fees just doesn't include the buildings, so I was just...
Well, normally we don't include buildings, but there are occasions where the city does a project that might need that. But those are the ones that we use the most for almost all the city projects.
And they're certified to do commercial appraisals?
Yes, this particular firm we've been using for the last 5 years for the city. And he does all the stuff for ADOT, State Land Department, Maricopa County, Coconino County, Yavapai County, Prescott Valley, almost every city in the valley. Very well qualified for governmental appraisals.
Okay, all righty, thank you so much.
Entertain a motion at this point.
Mayor, I move to approve consent item E.
Second.
Motion and second, please vote.
Passes 6-0.
All right, let's move on to consent ordinance.
Adoption of consent ordinance items 8A through 8B. Ordinance number 2020-1728, an ordinance of the mayor and council of the city of Prescott, Yavapai County, Arizona, authorizing the acceptance of a public drainage easement agreement from Saul Levine and authorizing the mayor and staff to execute any and all documents to effectuate said acceptance. Ordinance number 2020-1729, an ordinance of the mayor and council of the city of Prescott, Yavapai County, Arizona, authorizing the acceptance of a water line and underground electrical utility easement agreement, two separate ingress, egress, and underground public utility easement agreements, and a right of entry and temporary construction easement from James Deepwell Ranches No. 1 LLC, and authorizing the mayor and staff to execute any and all documents to effectuate said acceptances. Ordinance number 2020-1730, an ordinance of the mayor and council of the city of Prescott, Yavapai County, Arizona, authorizing the acceptance of a land exchange agreement between the city and James Deepwell Ranches No. 1 LLC for real property associated with the city's intermediate pump station, and authorizing the mayor and staff to execute any and all documents to effectuate said acceptance. And ordinance number 2020-1731, an ordinance of the mayor and council of the city of Prescott, Yavapai County, Arizona, authorizing the acceptance of a waterline easement and underground electrical utility easement agreement from Chamberlain Development, Prescott LLC, and authorizing the mayor and staff to execute any and all documents to effectuate said acceptance.
I don't think you took a breath there. That's pretty good. Thanks, Sarah. Entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move to adopt consent ordinance items 8A through 8D.
Second.
We have a motion and second. Is there any discussion? If not, let's please vote.
Passes 6-0.
All right, let's move on to item 9A, please.
Selection and approval of a sunset date for current temporary parklet program.
All right, Mr. Heine.
Mr. Mayor, Council, I'm going to review some survey results that were taken. I'll just give you a brief synopsis of the events leading up to this date. Following the September 22nd council meeting, council directed staff to come back with recommendations to sunset the current temporary parklet policy. Mayor asked that we conduct a survey of citizens, asking their perceptions of the parklet survey, and suggested sunset dates. This citizen survey began around October 1st, and it was sent to a permission-based list that we have of about 2,900 residents. The survey was also published in a Courier article that was done that weekend, and then it also has been posted on the city website. At the same time, Prescott Downtown Partnership also agreed to conduct a survey of businesses regarding the suggested sunset date question only. I'll read the results of the citizen survey first, and I will read the results of the PDP business survey about suggested sunset dates. I'll read each question, and then I'll read only the top result. But of course, if council has any questions about the other results, I'm happy to review those as well. This current citizen survey closed on Sunday at 9 p.m. We had 2,276 responses to this citizen survey. The first question was, do you support the city's parklet program for businesses affected by COVID-19? The top answer was yes, with a response rate of 72.6%. The second question is, do you feel the parklets are effective in mitigating the financial burden created by occupancy restrictions? The top answer was yes, with a response of 63.7%. The third question Would you support parklets on a permanent basis? The top answer was yes, with a response rate of 53.2%. The final question is regarding the sunset date, and I'll just read the dates that were given. It's as a multiple choice. They were given a choice. So the 4 dates that were asked were November 15th, 2020, December 1st, 2020, December 15th, 2020, and January 8th, 2021. The top response was for January 8th, 21, with a response rate of 39.1%. So that concludes the citizen survey, and I have the results from the PDP survey. MJ Smith could not be here today, but the business survey was conducted at about the same time, and it asked only one question, which was the sunset date question. There were 200 responses to this business survey. And I think it should be noted that in the citizen survey, we made it such that you can only respond once with the link. We had a few technical difficulties with people that couldn't get in the first time, but we wanted to make sure that we weren't getting multiple responses. And we also said in the citizen survey that if you're a business and you've responded to the PDP survey, please do not respond to this survey. So we put that in there as well. So these are 200 responses from the PDP survey, and the top vote getter was January 8th with a 68.5% result rate of those 200 responses for the sunset date. So that
John, I think it's interesting to note on this that, you know, going back to the city survey, you didn't mention, you know, the answer to an extent for do you support the city's parklet program. There's a 13.5%. So to some degree, you know, while it's not a resounding yes, apparently, but they feel like there is benefit. And that's true on that one, as well as 24% on the next one. Does it mitigate the financial burden? So I think those are important to note. Also, on supporting a permanent, a parklet on a permanent basis, where it says with restrictions, there's another nearly 14%, which we know we're going to implement restrictions anyway. I mean, that's the whole point of looking at this and coming up with some sort of policy for 2021. So that's kind of a foregone conclusion. So when you add those together, do you support parklets on a permanent basis? You're looking more like about 67%, which is significant. I think it's important to look at that.
Great.
Anything else that you had?
Don't have anything else to add. I'm happy to answer questions.
Okay, questions, comments from the council. Let's go to Councilmember Rusing.
Thank you. Thank you, John. I would just like to say the reason why we're having this conversation is because of the COVID epidemic, and data has apparently come out today that lockdowns can actually be detrimental because there's like a rebound effect after people have been holed up for months, and then they go from one extreme to another. So I think it's best to just maintain kind of a consistent course where we mask up, social distance, do our hand washing, and it's very important that we do as much as we can outside. And one of the positive things of having a heat wave and a drought is we have beautiful weather, and it looks like the public has spoken, both our businesses and the people of Prescott, and they would like to see this thing extended into January. Thank you.
Councilman Blair.
Well, first of all, I feel for the people that have not been able to open up. The fact of the matter remains that this council, based upon a lot of information I've heard and received, that people believe we have done that. I want to assure everybody that this came from the governor's office and not from the mayor's office or Prescott City Council. Number two, when you start talking about dates for removal, again, I'll go back and say that shouldn't be tied to an arbitrary date of people out there making different decisions. The governor put these folks in harm's way, and from my standpoint, they should continue to do what they're doing until the governor opens up for full business in the restaurants and the bars, and then at that time, the parklets have 30 days to be removed.
So you
That's
tie
a-
it directly to the governor's orders.
That's right. We didn't do this, the governor did it. So I think it's fair and clear to state when the governor opens up these businesses that then there's 30 days to remove. If it's not until March, and he opens it up in March, then they have 30 days to remove.
Is that a motion?
Yes, sir.
I'll second it. Let's go to Councilman Good.
Well, Mayor, I don't know that this was ever contemplated to be a permanent policy or creation of these parklets. Clearly, this would be gifting of public assets, should we even contemplate that. We've had, and I've mentioned this before, studies showing that each one of those parking spaces has a potential value of $35,000, not only to the people who park there, but for the merchants and retailers who rely on those customers to be able to occupy and those places and to be able to support their businesses. So as far as I'm concerned, the question of permanency is off the table. And I was very disappointed that we didn't have a chance to even debate or discuss this prior to the approval of several of these parklets for restaurants and bars. And now we're creating a situation where we're having businesses in conflict with each other, in conflict with neighbors. We've got supporters versus opposers. We've got some businesses, depending on their type of business, that are benefiting. Other businesses that, because of their type of business, are being damaged. So in my estimation, the only question is when we're going to withdraw the approval of these parklets. Knowing that, we've got Acronite coming up, we've got the courthouse lighting, we've got the boot drop during New Year's Eve. There's a lot of downtown activities that historically people will come to, anticipate, looking forward to attending, and they have the expectation that we're going to try to make these as traditional as possible. So I suggested when we first brought this up November 15th, but considering the number of people that would like to see this extended longer, I think I could live with December 1st or even December 15th, but no date beyond that. When we start dealing with snow events, precipitation, driving challenges, moving snow around, if we get another snowmageddon early, there could be a lot of liability problems. And I think if we select December 1st or December 15th, we're going to be able to support those retailers that have invested in these parklets, but not to the extent that they're going to damage the business of their neighbors. So I'd be willing to accept the December 15th date, but none later. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Blair, just to get some clarity with your motion, you said when the governor opens restaurants, would that be 100% capacity?
Absolutely correct.
Yeah. Bars and
let's face it, they're the ones, the bars and restaurants are the ones that have been damaged the most.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it puts very clear clarity to the restaurant owners and the businesses out there that as soon as the governor, who made this recommendation, eases those restrictions, and they have 30 days to remove.
Yep. Very good. Thank you. We have a motion on the table. Any other questions, comments from the council? Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you. Councilman Blair, I heard you say that this morning, and I think I agree with what you're saying. I hope that the governor will, we've been asking for more local control. Hopefully we're going to be able to open our city back up fully as soon as possible. And I would tell you, and I've said this to our city manager, and I would really like for us to continue to invest in our Whiskey Row Alley. I actually prefer not to have the parklet that's on Whiskey Row and let's make things work in the alley. I sent Michael some pictures from this weekend. Really awesome things that can be done back there. I've talked to several of the bar owners that would love to work with us and work with the fire department, and let's get that going. We've done the arches. We've done a beautiful mural. We're going to do the lights soon. So I think there's a huge opportunity for us on Whiskey Row Alley. And I see Skylar's in the audience, and I think the parklet in front of Rose's looks great. The Raven, I think those look great. But I am very concerned about Whiskey Row and Montezuma, so I'd like to see us move those things to the back. So that's just but I'm good with Councilman Blair's recommendation.
Councilman Sischka?
Thanks, Mayor. I was just in Durango, and they've got both sides of their main street lined with parklets, or we call them parklets. They call them something else. But they're not nearly as nice, most of them, as what we have. It looks like a flea market. And I think that they're going to have a real problem parking once the train comes back and starts running, and tourists all of a sudden are looking for parking spaces. But that being said, I think that what we have is far superior and far more advantageous to our downtown area than what they have. I do think that at one point I was looking at November 15th to shut them down. Durango's shutting down on November 2nd. And what they said is, we're going to take until spring to plan out what next year is going to look like. Mm-hmm. So I would agree with Councilman Blair. I would say that, having a set date for them, because we have such nice daytime temperatures all up through the end of January almost. I wouldn't mind seeing how they work out. I would like to see them shut down at some point, and at that time we need to get a committee together of the parklet folks and the city folks to take a look at what would be the best going forward. And as far as being permanent, I still haven't made a decision about that, but I think that it would be worth it to let them go for as long as, at least this time, for the governor is enforcing restrictions.
Thank you. I think, what you're doing with that kind of motion is you're really prioritizing jobs. If we arbitrarily shut down in December or January, it could be several months before bars and restaurants are open. So I appreciate Councilman Blair's thought that you're really preserving jobs for these people by allowing them to have this extra space. And I think it's really important. And I think, Councilman Sischka, you have a good point. We need a policy. I know that Mr. Heine will be working with others on a policy that I'd like to see by February. Is that fair, Michael?
Yeah, I think that's completely reasonable.
So these can, parallel tracks here. I think, Councilman, this could go on into the first quarter or more of next year with these open. But at the same time, we want to see a permanent policy that we can look at in the meantime. So good comments. So what we're going to do here is open up to public comment. We've had a lot of public comment on this. I'm surprised how much three little decks in our city can create in terms of conversation. But at any rate, what I'd like us to keep in mind is that you do have a limited time. We've heard a lot of different angles on this, so let's try to be creative and have something new for us today, if you could, please. And then most importantly, remember that we are talking just about the sunset date for these temporary parklets. And then we do have a motion on the table. Keep that in mind, that 30 days after the governor fully opens 100% restaurants and bars, that we will sunset these is the motion at this time. So with that, Sarah, let's do public comment.
Okay. The first one I have is Josh McCrower.
How are we all doing today? Thank you very much for suggesting that, Steve. I think that's a really great suggestion because, you know, we are really struggling with the current restrictions. We're still losing money, but this has helped immensely with bringing back some of those losses, keeping jobs, you know, and being able to be here when this is all over. So I want to thank you all for taking that into consideration. Really, that was one of the things I was going to ask you to consider today, you know, and so we can all come together as a community and find some sort of mutual ground. I think that would be fantastic. You know, Jersey Lily Saloon in particular, we raised $42,000 for that courthouse lighting. We want to be here to do that for our community every year and continue to do that. We're doing it this year. We're trying to see how we could incorporate that potentially into our event. You know, so working with us on the sunset date, it's huge. So thank you guys for your consideration and making this happen for us. Thank you all.
Thanks, Josh.
Ty Fitzsimmons. Or Fitzmaurice, I'm sorry.
Mayor, Council, thank you all. I just wanted to say I'm not sure you've heard it enough how effective, and staff especially, how effective this has been in supporting us through this very difficult time. So I'm the owner of the Raven Cafe and the Peregrine Book Company and the Grey Dog Guitars, all on North Cortez, on the 1 and 200 blocks. And I just wanted to add a couple things. You know, it has helped immensely so far. So we've got our revenue nearly at 2019 levels, thanks to this parklet. We've actually added jobs over our 2019 job count. They've made a phenomenal difference. And we have a lot of public support for it. We've had a lot of enthusiasm for it. So mostly I just want to say thank you. I do want to mention owning 2 retail establishments on the same street and within 1 block of where we now have our parklet. I can say I have not seen any downturn in revenue at either of those establishments for having our parklet, for losing those 4 parking spots. So as part of grist for the mill going into 2021 and discussing how this might stack up. But generally, thank you very much for taking such a community forward perspective here and really acting quickly and effectively to support restaurants and hospitality, which I'm sure you all know is the 2nd largest employer in Prescott. So we really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Ty.
David Caldwell.
How you doing? I'm Dave Caldwell, 42-year resident of Prescott, Arizona. I own 3 retail stores on Cortez Street, North Cortez, closest to the Ravens parklet. I come in opposition. As you said, each one of these roughly bring on $35,000 in revenue. My farthest stores from the parklet are doing very good. They're back to 2019 years up. My closest store is being crushed. I can't figure out why. They're basically somewhat similar to all of them, but I don't know if it's the parklet or whatever it is, loss of parking, but it can't help. I just wonder, I thought last time when I was here talking, we were talking about snow removal being a concern. Now we're not even talking about snow removal being a concern. We're just going to leave them up throughout the whole winter and just deal with getting around snow removal. I wonder what we're going to do, what they're doing with heaters, electrical out there in the wintertime. They're going to bring extension cords out. You can't use them. The fire marshal doesn't allow extension cords. So I want to see people do well. I want to see businesses do well. But when COVID's over, I don't want to see them because they're, like I said, I believe it's hurting my one business. And that's why I'm here in opposition. Thank you.
Thank you.
Daniel Coughlin.
Mayor, Council, thank you guys. I have a prepared speech. You guys covered a lot of it. I just wanted to get through it. So, March 19th, Governor Ducey forced the closure of dine-in service at restaurants due to the COVID-19 pandemic. On that day, Rosa's was forced to lay off 30 employees. Not knowing at the time if food supply chains would be disrupted, we changed our model to best serve our community at a time of need. We offered affordable 3-course meals for a little to no profit. We did this for 53 consecutive days until May 11th, when dine-in service was authorized to reopen. Over the next few weeks, we were able to bring back an additional 15 employees, but with local cases of COVID rising, we needed an alternative way to help mitigate the risk of exposure for staff and our guests. Skylar and myself came up with an idea of building a parklet like many other communities have done nationwide. And with the swift action of local officials, we were granted permission. It took 11 days from concept to completion. This was only possible because of fast-acting local officials, and I appreciate everyone that was part of that. Now we're here 7 months since the forced shutdown, still with strict regulations on indoor dining with no end in sight. I come here today to ask you to give our industry a fighting chance to make it through this pandemic and allow us to keep our parklet as long as there are dine-in capacity limits. One community, stronger together. Thank you.
Thank you, Danny.
That's all the comment cards I have, unless there's anyone else in the audience that has anything. Yes, sir.
Actually, Mayor and Council, I'm sorry, I forgot one last thing. I was reminded about snow removal. We did want to propose as part of this, the discussions, especially starting in February, it sounds like they will, that we're very much in support of this program, obviously, and both from my retail establishments and my hospitality establishment. And we'd like to be constructively involved in solving any of the concerns you have. Snow removal specifically, we'd be happy to take on whatever amount of that we could do in our location, and we have plenty of heating options for outdoor space. We do have a rooftop deck, so we are familiar with winterizing outdoor spaces, and that the rooftop deck has been really important for us in past years. It's provided a lot of revenue, even in the coldest parts of winter. So we have a lot of confidence that the parklet would also continue to work through most of the winter, if not all of it. So
thank you, Ty.
Thanks.
I appreciate it.
And then I have one comment that I received through the portal from MJ Smith. Good afternoon. I apologize for not appearing in person today. In regards to the sunset date for the Parklet program, the Prescott Downtown Partnership requests you permit the structures through the holiday season to allow business owners to weather continued COVID occupancy restrictions, capitalize on the investments made, and avoid staffing reductions. While we understand and recognize the concerns of business owners who do not support the use of street parking for this purpose, we believe parking concerns can be creatively mitigated. With historical snowfall measurements remaining under 2.5 inches through January, we request you allow the parklets to remain in use through January 8th, which was supported by nearly 70% of PDP survey responders. Thank you for your consideration. And I did also receive a comment from Derry McCormick asking about the petition for business owners on Whiskey Row, which was distributed to council via email yesterday, as well as on all of your seats at the dais this afternoon with updated comments. And that's all I have.
All right. Thank you, Sarah. We have a motion and a second at this point. If there's no other council comments, I'll call for the vote.
I'd like to have that petition read from the merchants on Whiskey Row.
Okay.
Sarah, I have a copy of it if you want it.
You want? Yeah.
Okay.
We, the undersigned, are not in favor of permanent or even longer-term temporary parklets on Whiskey Row and around the plaza. We believe there are many serious issues with this program. Disruption and serious economic impact to other businesses due to blocking entrances, blocking sight of the businesses, restricting access, and losing public parking spaces. Whiskey Row is one of the most historic and iconic streets in Arizona. Having huge bulky decks in the middle and in front of it destroys the aesthetics and doesn't fit the historical nature of the area. If one business is granted a parklet, everyone should be able to have one, which will compound all these issues. This has the potential to block every business on Whiskey Row. Parklets have limited usage due to weather and other factors, but are still present and cause these issues 24/7. Special events, the boot drop, parades, etc., these will completely block the business's access and view. Flooding will add to flooding concerns as it blocks water flow even more. Fire, concerns about firefighters having access to the blocked businesses. Snow removal. These structures will cause issues with snow removal both on the road and the sidewalks. This was signed by The Palace, Kickapoo Express, Matt's Saloon, Birdcage, French Hen Boutique, I believe is what that says.
French Hen Boutique.
Thank you. WR Harley Davidson, Treat Center, Galloping Goose, Ian Russell Gallery, Hotspot Nail Spa, Artful Eye Jewelers, and 1818 Spirits.
All right, anything else from the council? All right, we have a motion and a second. Let's vote.
Passes 5-1.
All right, thank you. Let's move on to item 8B, please.
Adoption of resolution number 2020-1759, approving city contract number 2010-086A3, an amendment to city contract number 2010-086 with James Deepwell Ranches number 1 and 2.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council. Craig Dosseth, Public Works again. Sarah, I'm not sure what I did to this. When I unplugged my travel drive, then it went solid blue. That's when it did it.
You're fired.
Thank you.
I don't know what to see there, to be quite honest with you. What did you unplug?
I had travel drive in there, and when I unplugged it, then it did this.
Can you put it back in?
Plug it back in.
A jump drive?
See?
It's
Yep.
sharing the.
What do you do when you lose Markwood Phil?
Just had to get close.
We did, okay. Although it's usually Woodville.
Well, Mayor, maybe first I'll start by saying, sorry, we did not purposely plan on celebrating October 13th with 13 items today. But that's where we ended up. So this item, as Sarah introduced, is to approve amendment number 3 to city contract number 2010-086 to change timing of the city's obligation to provide water service to the James Deepwell Ranches number 1 and number 2, Deepwell. Establish water allocation sources for various uses and correct the boundary map related to water allocation. So the initial resolution, number 3996-1026, between the city and the Deepwell was entered into a procedural pre-annexation agreement in 2009, November 24th, 2009. Some additional history items and or specific, information items go with this. So the original agreement stems from the 1967 water transmission main easement, which identifies the size and number of connections to supply water to the ranch lands in exchange for the ability to run city water line across the ranch land. Ultimately, today, there are 3 water lines now crossing the ranch lands. 2 of them in the specific 67 easement, as well as an additional one. So the procedural pre-annexation agreement set in place a volume of water for use on the ranch. That is 1,850 acre-feet in total. In that agreement, it is broke up into 3 increments. So, and another piece in there, that 1,850 acre-feet that was agreed upon and ultimately accepted by the Deepwell Group is a considerable amount less than the size and number of taps that were identified in that original easement are capable of supplying. The agreement was put into place when there was a different view of the city's water portfolio, and a large amount of the water was locked up in over-allocations to residential uses. Back at that time, they were allocating 0.35 acre-feet for every single residential unit. With models, master plans, and such that we have now, we have much better information, have a better understanding of the true use and the total water portfolio view.
Craig, if I could just ask for the record here, what's our total allotment in our water portfolio at this point from ADWR?
16,507 point something.
16,500 acre feet is a pretty good number.
Yes.
And what did we use in the last last full year?
In 2019, we were at like 6,870 acre feet.
I think it's very important. I know we've said it a number of times, but it's very important that the public understands when you talk about what we've learned about the water portfolio over the last couple of years, this is very significant. And I want to make sure the accurate numbers are out there because I know that it was misquoted at some point here recently at a water subcommittee meeting that we have 16,500 plus acre feet of water in our water portfolio, and we're using some 6,800 acre feet as of last year. Thank you. Yes.
Craig, we used 60, or we pumped 6,800 acre feet. How much did we recharge?
Now you're putting me on the line. 2019.
Wasn't it like 7,800 acre feet?
I believe it was. And
okay.
So
we actually recharged more than we pumped.
Yes, for 2019.
And I know it varies year to year. It's a good question, good point to make, Councilman Sischke. I know it does vary based on precipitation. But to some degree, we're putting as much back in as we're taking out. It's not true every year, but some years, as in this example, we put in more back into the aquifer than we even pumped out. So, sorry, I just think those numbers are always good for these kinds of conversations to make sure everybody really understands our water portfolio.
And we were doing excellent this year as well until September. And then we went to a negative. Otherwise, all the way through the year, we were on a positive as far as recharging more than what was being pumped up to that time. So, yeah, and our
Craig, I'm going to dovetail on their dovetail. 2000 and 2001, the community was about 25% smaller, and we pumped about 8,100 acre feet of water. Is that correct?
That's correct. Today, we're still using less water than what we did for like 2001 through 2008, every one of those years.
Councilmember Rusing.
I'll save my comments till after
okay.
it's done.
I just saw your number up here.
So with the allocation that was being utilized and a different view on the portfolio, then it kind of gave a false view at the time that to consider 1,850 acre feet of water to this project, the view was that it could potentially lock up or tie up available water within the portfolio. We now know that amount and that view is considerably different. So that was in 2009. As we move forward, then we came into the development agreement and the master plan. So the master plan set into place total number of houses of 10,500 rooftops to be considered on the ranch associated with the annexation. If that equal amount of land had not come into the city and would have been developed in the county, it was capable of having 17,000 rooftops on it. And the master plan settled and was agreed to 10,500. As staff has worked through a few of the first projects within the Deepwell Ranch area, we found a few discrepancies or differences between guiding documents. So primarily the maps between the procedural pre-annexation agreement and the adopted master plan do not cover the same land area. So this is the Exhibit A, is the map that is attached to the 2009 procedural pre-annexation agreement. So the dark line right here going around identifies the land that was included with the 1,850 acre-feet of water. Exhibit B is the map included with the master plan. So on this exhibit, the master plan does not include an entire section and half of land down in this vicinity of it that is included in the 2009 agreement. This map includes additional land up here in the north, these two blocks that are not in that 2000 map. So this map has additional land in the upper northern eastern side. The other map has additional land in the southwestern side. So the agreement attaching the 1,850 acre-feet of water is to the southwest, and now the master plan is up here to the northeast. So also within the agreement, it was also identified that the procedural pre-annexation agreement allows the applicant of deep well projects to request water from the city's portfolio for any and every project as it's brought forward. And that's what we have been doing, is as a project would come forward in alignment with that 2009 agreement, a project would come forward and the applicant would submit to request water from the city, because that's what the agreement says, is that there is water available in the deep well allotment, but they can also request water from the city's portfolio. And this shows projects that have been processed. Here's the deep well water and increments of water that have been used from the deep well allocation. And then here are water allocations used from the city's portfolio to get the total amount of water for each project across the lines. So that's what we have in place right now today. Every project comes forward, they can request water from the city's portfolio. So the primary goal of this amendment is to provide clarification and clear direction to all parties that have to oversee the guidance of the documents. The inclusion of both maps clarify the lands that would be covered by the water allocation. The total number of residential units will not change from the 10,500 approved by the development agreement and the master plan. So what the amendment contemplates is to cover the total land area, include from both maps, combine that together, and still follow the 1,850 acre-feet. So ultimately, this has the potential of reducing the total rooftops, because by the existing agreement, every project that comes forward, they can ask for water from the city's portfolio also to go with their water portfolio. And by combining both maps together, it brings the 10,500 rooftops on the total land mass by the maps combined. With that, I'd be happy to entertain additional questions.
Okay, thank you, Craig. We can go to Councilmember Rusi.
Thank you. In a nutshell, what we're talking about is a contract, changing a contract. The name of the contract is the Procedural Pre-Annexation Agreement, City Contract Number 2010-086. And as an elected representative, I was not given a copy of this contract for my review, even though I requested it. It's not on my desk. I didn't get an email. So we're just pretty much in the dark with this, and I feel that it's being ramrodded through. There's no emergency at all. We need more public discussion. In fact, I find it ironic, we've spent more time on parklets and with more transparency than we have with this change in this contract, which could potentially change the face of Prescott and will cause rampant, unsustainable growth, because what we're talking about here is transferring 2,000, enough water for, it used to be 2,000 homes from the Big Chino. It was going to be dependent upon the building of the pipeline. And now we're talking about transferring that water to our already overstressed Little Chino in the amount of 5,000 homes. And we need to look at the other stakeholders that are involved in these aquifers. We haven't talked to Prescott Valley about the fact that even though they're a stakeholder and have an ownership interest in the pipeline, that according to this today, if we pass this, it says we're not going to be building the pipeline. And also the big—
I don't think that's true, by the way.
The 900-pound gorilla in the room is Salt River Project. They're very interested in the Little Chino and the Big Chino, and because it affects, our pumping affects the headwaters of the Verde River. So I think we need more careful discussion, and we need to look at the implications of this, and I would like to make a motion that we table this issue today.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Good.
Hold on a minute, Mayor.
Okay.
Motion to table.
Second.
There was a motion to table and a second, so at this point,
Wait, I wasn't doing anything until there was a second. Now there is a second.
Okay.
Was that Councilman Good that seconded that? I'm sorry.
Yep, so we have a motion to table from Councilmember Rusing and a second from Councilman Good, and we'll continue discussion with Councilman Good.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean,
the procedural motion to table takes precedent over discussion.
Okay.
So at this point, the council needs to vote on the motion to table, because if it's tabled, then there's no further discussion. If it's not, sorry?
Yes means table, no means not.
A yes vote is to table, and no vote is to not table.
Okay, so we have a motion and second to table this item at this time. A yes vote, you are voting to table the motion. A no vote is to proceed. Is that correct? Let's all vote.
Fails 4-2.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Paladini. Let's move on with Councilman Good.
Yeah, my concern was I also had to pull some additional background material just to have a good understanding of what we were trying to do here. Pulling the previous contracts, the First and Second Amendment, to the original agreement, the reference to the first increment of water release, the second increment, referencing the 850 acre feet. That actual number I could not find listed in any of this material, although the third increment referenced the fact that 900 additional acre feet would be allocated once the Big Cheeto Water Ranch pipeline had been constructed and water was being delivered into the Prescott AMA. So that is a separate contractual obligation, in my view, only once the pipeline had been constructed and was delivering water into the Prescott AMA. So the reference to the other errors in the master plan were not included in my packet, so I didn't have a chance to consider those, although the explanation from Mr. Dossett makes a certain amount of sense. And that's one of the reasons why I voted to table this, so we could have a broader understanding of what we're actually agreeing to here, not only for the council, but for the public at large. I also mentioned the fact that the SRP study has not been completed. I think we're at the point where we've concluded all of our drilling and data collection, but we were informed that it would probably take another year for that data to be analyzed in a final report released to the public, and how this pipeline may or may not be constructed and what the cost would be. So that certainly impacts this third increment release of an additional 900 acre feet. So when we consider the fact that at the time these agreements were made, we were looking at a single family home allocation of 0.35 acre feet per year. And now that we have a better understanding of how that water use could be properly used under our water policy, that really doubles the number of homes that could be constructed even with the first 450 and 400 acre feet, because now we're down to 0.17. So that in essence, it doubles the amount of homes that could be constructed even with the first two increments of water release. So that project already can make a substantial number of additional homes even before this third increment is considered. I think the consideration of this proposal is really significantly premature until the very least the SRP study has been completed. In the meantime, as it says, any additional water needs could go through our current normal allocation process within the city's current water policy. So I agree that I think the need to rush this through with very little discussion, with public input, at the very least should have a study session so we could hash all these differences out and make sure that everything is above board and appropriate before we make this decision, when we have so many additional development issues on the table, whether it's the AED North and South annexation, our concerns about the Stringfield Water Ranch, what we just heard from Lisa Atkins from the State Land Trust, and some of her concerns about annexations and being able to work together, why we have to rush this through with so little notification. You know, when I get my packet on a Thursday afternoon and have to read 220 pages before I even start asking questions and ask for additional information, and then have to make a decision that could potentially have very large consequences, is just a rush to decision. By agreeing to this, I think we are at risk of sending a message to our minor partner in the Big Cheeto Water Ranch contract, which is Prescott Valley, by saying that it appears that we may not need nor ever build the Big Cheeto Water Ranch pipeline. I'm not prepared to make that statement. We can't anticipate what the demands on the current Prescott AMA and our ability to import water in the future might be. So I don't want to send a message that our minor partner in that agreement might say, well, we've already made a commitment of financial and growth expectations for this pipeline to be built and start delivering water. And the majority partner here, which is the city of Prescott, is not intending to follow through on their contract. That generates some more legal liability. So I think there's a lot of things that need to be considered before we move forward with this agreement. Those are my comments.
Councilmember Rusin.
Thank you. I would just like to remind everyone that we just can't change our minds on this. You know, once we allocate the water, we can't take it back. And judging from the one-page snapshot of the contract that was put up on the screen during the e-session, it seemed to be very poorly written, had lots of loopholes and gray areas. And I really think that if we're going to do a good job, we need to outsource this contract to be interpreted by a impartial third-party water lawyer.
Mayor, can I comment on this?
Sure.
Excuse me.
I'd like to comment
I'm not
because
finished.
you've accused me of now,
The
for 5
previous
times you've accused me
council-
of being impartial or
The previous
impartial and biased
council
towards developers.
was
when I'm
trying-
following council direction. And how dare you insult me by calling me unethical and biased?
about the contract.
It's ridiculous. No, you're calling me biased.
I am talking about the contract being poorly written. You weren't here. You weren't even involved. I am talking
Mayor,
about this
can I read an
contract
email?
from
Sure.
2009.
Mayor,
The
I have an
previous
email
council
that I
was
received.
trying.
All right, hang on. Mr. Palladini, you have the floor.
Mayor, I have an email I received that I'd like to read to the council that is not attorney-client privileged. Hi, I would like to request that the complete document, procedural pre-annexation agreement, city contract number 21086 be emailed to me, and also please put a paper copy on my desk. Also request that the complete doc be posted on the website in the agenda packet for public review. The complete agreement should have been included in the packet. This is, by the way, an email to myself and Mr. Lamar. If you want to put on the overhead.
And me.
This is a disaster for any hope of sustainable, reasonable growth for our community. It reinforces the fact that we need to make all of these agreements part of the annexation docs so that a supermajority vote will be required. As it is now, the current council can undo any decision previously made by any reasonable growth council by 4 developer-funded votes. Also concerned that SRP and PV have not been given the courtesy of a notification of this change, which impacts the Verde River and gives the impression that we will not be building the pipeline. Also, we are changing the general plans and the water service area without public comment. Also now DW can build 5,000 homes using Little Chino Aquifer instead of the Big Chino ? I am disgusted by your lack of fiduciary duty to the community. Whose payroll are you on? You are circumventing the will of the people. Mayor, I cannot let that stand.
I stand by all those words,
I'm
by
sorry.
the way.
So I've been an attorney for 27 years, 20 years as a municipal attorney, over 20 years as a military officer. And I'm going to ask the council that these kinds of accusations of unethical and illegal behavior that I'm on someone's payroll not be taken by this council. That's unacceptable to me. I cannot accept those kinds of accusations. And Councilwoman Roosing just stood by those comments. So I'm going to ask the council to do something about this, because to accuse myself and the city manager.
Well, just to dovetail with Ms. Palladini, this was sent to me as well.
This is not an agenda item, is it? I thought
This
we were
is,
talking about
the
this
subject's
contract.
titled Deep Well Pre-Annexation Agreement, your email.
And I was also...
Agenda item, this between Mr. Palladini and...
No,
the
it
elected
wasn't. It
official.
was actually sent to Michael Lamar as well.
Yes.
And I guess when you say you stand by your comments, you're also standing by your comments saying that I'm on somebody's payroll. So I don't believe I can accept the character assassination that you're throwing my way either.
We're talking about a water contract here.
No, we're
out
talking
in
about
the weeds right
ethical
now.
behavior and respect for fellow people that work for this organization. That's what we're talking about.
You chose to make this public. I didn't.
I don't know if that's true.
That's correct, because Councilwoman Roosing copied her husband on the email. Therefore, it's a public document. There was no privilege.
I was out of town, and I was using my, I didn't have access to anything. I had to use my own personal Gmail.
It is made a public document.
Frankly, I'm not sure you being out of town justifies you saying people are on the take.
just questioning your fiduciary duty. Who do you?
Questioning my ethics, whose payroll you're on is questioning my ethics.
Furthermore, I would suggest that that is a relationship with someone who's paying you off is the implication. Therefore, now you've implied that Deepwell Ranch is paying these guys off, which is absolutely abhorrent. I don't know if you really understand what you've written here, but it is horrible.
And Mayor, I would like to add, if you don't mind, 4 developer-funded votes. What do you mean by that, Councilwoman Rosine? Who are your 4 developer-funded votes? I will tell you, I have heard this from you so many times, and I want the citizens of this city to know I am not a developer-funded vote. I only vote for what's in the best interest of Prescott, and for you to question our integrity on this council, as well as the integrity of our employees, I think is really beyond. I was shocked when I read this.
And Mayor, if I got a little heated, I apologize, but this really does, it really incensed me. And the reason I felt need to bring it up is because the council needs to make this decision based on the merits of this matter, not on these false accusations that there are 4 council people who are paid off and your city manager and your city attorney on someone's payroll. This needs to be done on the merits and whether it's a good policy decision or not, and not on these false accusations.
Understood. Thank you.
Also, Mayor, just to correct the record, that was addressed to me as well. So I think this probably even makes more sense to table this until all these things can be clarified, because I know it even impacts my concerns about how I would vote on it.
Well, and for the record, I was CC'd on responses from both Mr. Lamar and Palladini, so I was aware of it. And much like Billy, I get sick of hearing that we have some sort of developer-funded votes. This is ridiculous. And you keep saying it, and that accusation, then you're implying that I don't make good decisions for all the people of the city of Prescott, and that is absolutely false, and I do not appreciate your assumption of that. And it needs to stop.
You know, Councilmember Rusi.
I'm sorry, but this is not, I am not the agenda item. And I'm an elected public official, and I'm entitled to my opinions.
You brought this into the agenda item. This was your doing.
This was not anything that I was going to bring up. I was just talking about a water
It's written right here.
contract. I was
You
talking
brought it up
about a
in
water
the context of the pre-annexation agreement with Deepwell. That's the email. That's now in public record. Councilman Sushka.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, Councilmember, I'm a 40-year Rotarian. The first thing about Rotarians is that what we think, say, or do. And the first thing is it the truth? You don't know anything on here. Can you prove anything here? I have to tell you that, yes, we accepted developer contributions. But have I ever had a developer say, this is how I want you to vote? Have I ever had a developer say, this is what I want you to say? And the answer is no. I just can't believe what you're trying to put off on the public and how the impression you're trying to leave of this council is that we're a bunch of ne'er-do-wells and that we don't have the best interests of Prescott at heart. Yeah, you got your 11,000 votes. But I got 10,200 the first time I ran, so I wasn't too far behind you. But I never used that in a public forum like you do all the time. So, you know, the old Beatles song, it kind of ended, and it said, in the end, the love you take is equal to the love you make. Well, you're not making much love, and you're not making it real easy to work with you. So that's what I have to say.
There.
I'm going to get back to the agenda item. Today was the first day I saw this, and I haven't had a chance to digest it, but I'm sure I was one of the 4. So let me go back and say that the agreement, which I was part of when it was written, caps the number of house structures that can be built on the Deep Well Ranch. I don't care how you cut it and what the words say.
That's exactly right.
There's a man of honor sitting out there that is a property owner that has a contract and a development agreement that caps the number of houses. Who cares whether he gets it today or tomorrow? He is entitled to it, and it goes with the property. And he's capped the number of structures. This is all about personalities, about no growth, and I'm sick and tired of listening to it. Ductile iron or no ductile iron.
Well, I think, this is really a simple deal, Steve. You bring a good point, is that there's a cap on the number of homes. We shook hands with Deep Well Ranch and said, we're going to give you a certain amount of water, period. Then it is up to us to figure out how, from our water portfolio, we want to deliver that water. And if we can deliver it sooner than later with assurance, then why wouldn't we be good on our commitment of that amount of water?
And we have a man that I respect that is the owner and principal. I'd like to hear from him.
Mr. Mayor and Council, I wish I weren't here today under these circumstances. From what I heard, I'm saddened and appalled that I have to stand here and defend my reputation. For the last 35 years, I've done nothing but help this city, and I'm appalled that anybody would say anything different. I actually would be glad to hand out some things. History, as some of you know, I love history. And if you don't know history, then you fall into the same traps of the things you did before. So if I may, would you pass these out? These are just things to show you guys of what my family has done for this community. Actually, this one is just what we've done for the city of Prescott, not for the general community. Beyond that, I can tell you and this is a short list of some of the things we've done for the community. The hospital, the YMCA, Phippen Museum, St. Luke's, Highland Center, the zoo, Charlotte Hall, Chapel Hill, Grace Baptist Church, PUSD, the Arizona Community Foundation, Arizona Cowboy Poets, Project Aware, People Who Care, Trinity School, Prescott Area Habitat for Humanity, U of A, their 4-H, Yavapai College Foundation, and Yavapai Symphony. And if you add all that up, my family has put over $20 million into this community, our money. So don't ever tell me that we're not doing this for the community. And then I'm going to get to the point that you say this needs to have more time and more transparent. I don't know how much time. Those documents are 11 years old.
Yeah.
How much time do you want? And then transparency. We went through the general plan, and Kathy, you say it's not in the general plan? Well, maybe you have a different version of the general plan than I do, because here's the Prescott 2015 land use plan out of the general plan, and all of that area is in it. So you can't say it's not in the general plan. And talk about transparency. While the general plan was being developed, we were in a parallel program for some of the annexations. And so there were, I don't know how many hearings, since it was a Prop 400 annexation. We went through every step. We played by every rule that this community has asked of us. We have done everything this community has asked of us. And then after the annexations, we went beyond and created a master plan. Through that master plan, we went through 4 P&Z hearings, 4, more than AED. And after that, we went through 3 city council hearings before it was approved. So how much time, how much money do you want us to spend and how much transparency? So what's the urgency? Is 11 years urgent? Come on. At some point, you got to do something. And this is the point. We want to go on. And to call me a developer is absolutely ludicrous. I haven't developed one thing in my life. And I don't plan to. We're simply landowners. So you can say I'm a developer and I'll deny it, and we're not. And haven't been, will not be. So I don't know where you come off and say that Michael and Mr. Palladini are on my payroll. If I didn't look it up, I'm not sure I know how to spell Mr. Palladini's last name. So he's not on my payroll because I make all the payments.
Mr. Mayor, I have one question. I just have to ask it. Your master plan dictates 10,500 houses.
10,500. We've never wavered.
Is that the total you're going to build?
I have no idea. It's a 40-year project. I'm going to be long gone.
Okay.
I mean, you know, it may be my grandkids, but yeah, 10,500. And as Craig said earlier, under county, we could have built, what was the figure, 21,000 houses. And then after the general plan, after it was annexed, we were down to 17,500. I'll let you even know, again, you should also look at your general plan because obviously you're not as well versed on it as you think you are. The general plan was adopted by over 70% of the city voters, and less than 1 month after it was approved, because we were running parallel plans for annexation, Mrs. Jean Wilcox, who sat on the council, requested this high density come out, and we agreed to it. So it came out. So we went from 17,000 and agreed to, so then it was like 16,000 and we agreed to 10,500. So from 21,000, we're almost half. So I don't get what's going on here. And what Craig said, he didn't quantify some figures. He said that the volume from that 1967 agreement, it said that, you know, there were 2 taps available with 75 PSI on each tap. It could run 24/7. Our engineers said you could pull out probably 6,000 acre-feet of water. Craig says 4,000 acre-feet of water. And we're agreeing on, and we're stumbling on 1,800 acre-feet of water. I have always taken the high road. When we started this, getting that procedural pre-annexation agreement back in, like I say, 11 years ago, Craig McConnell, who was the city manager, he told me that if we asked for all the water that is in that agreement, we'd bankrupt the city in the water portfolio. He also told me if you ask for damages, you'll bankrupt the city financially. I took the high road. So that's why we came up with this. I'm telling you, no good deed goes unpunished anymore. Is that not correct? That's all I have to say. I don't see why this needs to be put off any further. You have precedent in the past for any project that comes up that you give it the water for the full project. That's all we're asking. It's fair, and I don't think it deserves being tabled, and I think it deserves a yes vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. James. I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 2020-1759.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, I wanted to basically speak to our citizens, and Michael, I'd ask that you join in on this, and the advantage to the city, to our citizens, of not having to, at this time, develop the Big Chino pipeline. I mean, I think we're kind of even going over that. I mean, we may one day, but we're not going to be driven to it by a timeline. So, Michael, can you address that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we have a partner in PV, and we're cognizant of that, and we're waiting the results from all the analysis that have been done. But Mr. James had a right when it was built for a certain amount of the water, and because our portfolio is so healthy, we can accommodate them now. You know, and a very interesting point I thought about today. If Ron was already in the city and owned all this property and came to us and said, do you have enough water to accommodate me? What would be the answer?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So because he went through the process, and I can argue a goofy process at the time, followed the rules, does he get behind the next guy that comes along when there's water available? I think the answer in a fairness and equity argument is not no, but hell no.
I remember, Mr. City Manager, maybe you were here at the time, but when we actually did a moratorium because we thought there wasn't the water. But now we have better data about our water. And so I think this changed the entire thing. So.
And Mayor, can I just address the Big Chino contract? the contract we have with Prescott Valley. Let me just make this real simple. Nothing in this approval abrogates the city's obligations in the contract with PV to ultimately, at some point, maybe develop the Big Chino. But that's a decision that has to be made separately from this issue. That is when there is a need, if there is a need, and based on this modeling that's going on to how taking water from the Big Chino may or may not affect the Verde River flow, which is SRP's interest, there will be those decisions made. So I want to make sure that no one out there in Prescott or Prescott Valley thinks that now we're going to can the Big Chino altogether. It is a future decision that will be made based on either this council or a future council, maybe long after all of us are gone. I don't know.
Thanks for that clarification. Councilmember Rusing.
Thank you. I'm sure we're all familiar with this saying, whiskey is for drinking and water is for fighting. So we've definitely lived up to the saying today. And I just would like to clarify, especially to Mr. James, that I was not casting any dispersions upon him personally. I've known him for a long time. He and his wife, Laura, fine people. But I was just talking about this contract, and he did reinforce the fact that it was very, very poorly written and had some loopholes in it that were unenforceable. And that's why I was recommending that when you have a poorly written contract, it haunts you forever. And, you know, that's when lawsuits happen. So I was recommending that we have a third party look at it who specializes in water, and maybe he can help us out so that we come to a resolution that will be satisfactory to all the stakeholders involved. Thank you.
All right, let's go to, I'm sorry, Councilman Good.
Yeah, I just want to make one last point that, you know, I like to do my own research. I like to do my own homework, so I know that when I make a decision, I can be held accountable for that decision. So even though maybe I didn't get all of the detail I would expect to get or have the time to get it, as long as I can be assured from our city attorney, from our public works director, that the limitation on the number of homes and the assurances that we're not taking any risk by approving this and having an impact on our contract with the Big Chino Water Ranch is something I'll withdraw my objections and be supportive of this. Thank you.
All right. Let's go to public comment.
Okay. Give me just one moment, please, Mayor. Leslie Hoy, I do see your hand raised. I'm going to read the comments that we've received through the portal before I come to you, so give me just a few moments, please. I just did want to acknowledge you. Our first comment comes from Michael Frau. I understand the next meeting includes an agenda item that involves a change that has not been vetted with the public, namely the City Council's decision to materially change the agreement to provide water to the Deepwell Ranch development. It appears that the council plans to delete the third increment of the agreement and combine it with the second increment. I believe the public has the right to vet how water resources are developed and allocated, and that decisions are made only when there is a well-documented and agreed plan. In particular, large allocations of water to new property development should not be approved in the absence of a clear funded plan. This is particularly important as local government will likely have pressing financial issues with the fallout from COVID, and difficult allocation issues should be addressed in consultation with the public, not dictated by property developers. I am not anti-development or developer, but do believe we need responsible development in the interest of the whole community and with long-term financial and environmental impacts transparently considered and debated. Ralph Hess. The proposed Third Amendment to the pre-annexation agreement appears to be converting Deep Well's reserved conditional future right to 900 acre-feet of water to a current allocation for the 900 acre-feet of water. The agenda memo claims no financial impact, yet wouldn't a current allocation of water be more valuable than a reserved conditional future right? Currently, I believe the fair market value of an acre-foot of city potable water is $15,000 to $20,000. Therefore, the city is agreeing to convert a conditional future right to current ownership or control of a city-owned resource, i.e. city potable water, valued at $13,500,000 to $18 million. What is reserved conditional future right of water worth? City of Prescott Charter, Article 6, Section 16, Proposition 401 provides that in part, quote, project is defined as a group of related activities undertaken for the purpose of performing a discrete function or set of functions, creating interrelated infrastructure, including but not limited to the transfer or sale of assets. The city may not, without prior voter approval through a proposition, enter into one or more agreements or contracts relating to a single project that conveys ownership or control of property or resources owned or controlled by the city, including any resource rights owned or assigned to the city but transported, sold, or used by another property owner. End quote. The city intends to transfer city resource assets, i.e. a conditional future right to 900 acre-feet of city potable water to a current allocation for the 900 acre-feet of water, valued between $13.5 million and $20 million, to Deep Well Ranches with the amendment to the pre-annexation agreement. To do so, the City of Prescott Charter requires prior voter approval of that amendment pre-annexation agreement. Based upon previous comments to City Council, Proposition 401, i.e. City of Prescott Charter, Article 6, Section 16, has been described as only applying to projects that have an aggregate project value of $40 million or greater. However, the $40 million project value threshold only applies to one subsection, B1D, category of projects. Three other subsections, B1A, B, and C, including the subsection applicable to the amendment to the pre-annexation agreement between the city and Deep Well Ranchers, are not subject to the $40 million threshold requiring prior voter approval. Therefore, doesn't the third amendment to the pre-annexation agreement between the city and Deep Well Ranches require prior voter approval? Gary Beverly. The Citizens Water Advocacy Group requests that the City Council postpone a vote until the public has adequate time to better understand and comment on the issue. We are dismayed at the astounding lack of transparency and public consideration by the City Council. It is totally inappropriate to consider this resolution when it is announced mere days before scheduling a vote during a heated election season and during a pandemic that restricts public attendance. The information in the council packet was incomplete. There has been no explanation of why this measure is needed. There has been no consideration of the effects of approval, no discussion of the impact on the amount or rate of growth, and zero analysis of the effects to our water supply. According to ADWR data, between 1996 and 2018, the overdraft in the Prescott AMA averaged 13,260 acre-feet per year. In 2018, ADWR calculated the overdraft at over 18,000 acre-feet per year. Using Prescott's new water policies and assuming the best case, a maximum of 80% of pumped groundwater can be permanently recharged to the aquifer for Prop 400 annexations. Every new home increases the overdraft and further endangers our water supply. This resolution has important implications for our future. It deserves much more thorough analysis and discussion. Rushing this resolution through approval increases suspicion and distrust of the motives of the council as a whole. as to whose interests are represented. CWAG urges the council to postpone consideration until the public has adequate understanding of the issue and a reasonable opportunity for thoughtful comment. I will now allow Ms. Hoy to speak.
She has 3 minutes.
Leslie, go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. First of all, I just want to say before I read my prepared comment that I'm sorry about all the vitriol. And I believe that all of us have to get over this climate that we live in order to solve problems. We have to be able to speak to each other. Okay, the council resolution for this item states, quote, whereas the parties now wish to further amend the agreement to change the timing of the city's obligation to provide water service to the subject of the property, unquote. So I'm wondering, what is the rush? Mr. James expressed that impatience with the timing, but at the same time, he said build out is going to take 40 years. So I just really don't understand why this needs to be decided right now. Also, I wonder, how does changing the timing benefit the taxpayers? At least 2 critical water events will take place in 2021. First, as Councilman Member Good said, the model, and some others mentioned, the model that will confirm the impact of pumping from the Big Chino Aquifer is not due until December of 2021. Secondly, ADWR will determine or begin to determine Prescott's groundwater allocation for the next 15 years. The city has already hired a big deal water lawyer in this matter. It's likely that both of these things will not be in Prescott's favor. So it appears that our city government and Deep Well are rushing to get their water ahead of these decisions. And a reason that it appears this way, the item today should have gone first to the Water Issues Committee and then at least to a study session. Also, it was buried in the packet. I had to call the city to correct the links on the Zoom links were incorrect. The newspaper didn't really know about this. So in general, that led to an appearance that may have been incorrect, that something was being rushed through and purposely hidden. I'm not accusing you of that. I'm just saying that that's what it appeared. Therefore, this is probably hopeless, but I wish you would delay your vote on the amendment so that we can have an informed and forthright consideration of the impact of this decision on our water supply. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. I don't have any other comments. And Mayor, I'd just like to point out the Zoom link that Ms. Hoy just referred to was not incorrect on the voting meeting agenda, which is the agenda that this item is on. It was incorrect on the study session agenda, and that was remedied Friday.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. There's no other public comment, I understand?
No, Mayor.
We have a motion and a second. Let's please vote.
Passes 5-1.
All right, thank you. Let's move on to item C, please.
Approval of city contract number 2021-038 to SAK Construction LLC for cured in place pipe rehabilitation project.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Eric Bay with Public Works. Every year, the wastewater division budgets $750,000 for collection system rehabilitation. We've done the same this year. And this year we've identified several segments of pipe. This year we've identified several segments of pipe that the best value to the city would be to rehabilitate them with a cured in place pipe technique. Last year we did use a pipe bursting technique, which is a little bit different and provides a little bit different advantages. I invite everybody on this council to come out at some point and see one of the linings, because it's indeed a very interesting technology. The places we are going to utilize it, you will see right away exactly why we have chosen to use a fully trenchless rehabilitation technique. City staff has worked with SAK in the past. We're fully confident that their crews are going to give us a very quality project. And we've looked at the cooperative purchasing bidding schedule, and we're very comfortable with the prices that we are getting. With that, I'll wrap it up very quickly here and take any questions that you might have about this project.
Thank you, Eric. Questions, comments from the council? Everybody's used their words up earlier, I think. Councilman Good.
Well, I just want to commend you, Eric. Every time you come up here, we can certainly feel your enthusiasm for your expertise, and it certainly shows in the quality of the projects you're involved in. One of these days, I think I'll take you up on that and try to take a look at this thing, because cured in place is it's hard to imagine without at least seeing some examples of it. But I know it's a highly effective and cost-effective way of solving some of those problems. So it's good to see you. Thanks.
Other questions, comments from the council? Public comment?
No, Mayor.
Entertain a motion.
Mayor, move to approve city contract number 2021-038.
Second. Motion and second, please vote.
Passes 6-0.
Okay, let's move on to item D, please.
Approval of city contract number 2021-040 with Holistic Engineering and Land Management, Inc., Helm, for letter of map revision flood studies.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Eric Stewart, Public Works. This item today is for the Helm contract for updating the floodplain mapping throughout the city. This project is funded through a FEMA grant, and the city's match for this grant, which is typically about 25%, came from a qualified activity that we previously completed, and that was the citywide FY20 citywide aerial mapping. This project will include a new analysis of all of our floodplains, but our primary focus is on the grant. For the grant, is that we focus on the floodplain maps down in the central Prescott area. The streams in this area include Butte Creek, Granite Creek, North Fork of Granite Creek, Miller Creek, North Fork of Miller Creek, and also Virginia Street Wash. In July of 2019, City Council awarded a contract to Helm for the FY20 Area Master Drainage Study. The study results gave us a much more accurate understanding of drainage throughout this 80 square miles around city that drains through our city. This is primarily because of the modeling software used. We use a Flow2D model software, and it's pretty high-tech, one of the latest technologies in modeling hydrology. And we also have these calculations from this model verified through the local rainfall and stream gauge data. The new FY20 city aerial mapping was recently completed, included replacing our old 2-foot contours with new 1-foot contours. So our FY20 contours will make the new floodplain mapping much more accurate. Once our final floodplain analysis is complete, we will review the results and compare the depth of the floodwaters to the current effective floodplain maps that became effective March of 2018. And the final floodplain stream list submitted in our new letter of map revision to FEMA will be decided upon once the final floodplain analysis of the entire city is completed. And good news, FEMA now allows agencies like us to submit up to 15 firm maps, and we only have 10 in our city, through the LOMR process. So we only have to go through the 90-day process and not the 3-year process that we did last time around. So that's great news. With that, I'd entertain any questions about this item.
Councilman Blair.
How many times are we going to do this? I just got to tell you, is it government at its best? Yep. And those streams have been there forever and they haven't changed, but yet we're doing another FEMA map. Mm-hmm. And it was done in 18?
It was.
Okay. No other comments, Mayor. I don't know how to comment to that.
So there's no question?
No. Okay. You're good. I'm glad you're employed.
Mayor Pro.
You do a good job.
Mayor Pro Tem.
I love your smile.
Seems like the last time that we did this, it affected folks with their insurance.
Correct.
And so that is an issue, right? Will that happen again?
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem. So what we're doing is we're using, the maps that we're using now were started in 2008. We use aerial mapping that had problems. And this is all done, 10 plus years ago. The new mapping we have, the 2020 mapping, like I said, it's plus or minus, it's 1 foot. And they used 2-foot data, which had accuracy problems. And so already we're stepping up and we're getting much more accurate information. The next thing we're doing, and I'm trying to answer some questions that aren't being asked, is that we're using some technology that wasn't around or accepted by FEMA at that time. FEMA uses, for the mapping that we now use, kind of an antiquated methodology for precipitation. And the methods we're looking at using now, and we've used for our golf links, LOMR, that's already been submitted to FEMA, is kind of a new methodology developed by the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration. So this is high-tech stuff developed by a scientist and a hydrologist, and we're using that precip data to actually create these new maps. And so if we're successful with this, I foresee that it will benefit every flood insurance premium payer in the city. Okay. If there are not issues and FEMA fights us on us, we have the ability to, we've committed to 9 stream miles, and we have the ability to choose other streams that are more advantageous to the city to map if we come across that road. But that's just kind of a footnote if that happens. But we feel very confident that our new contour data is going to kind of lead the way because of its accuracy. So hope that answers your question.
Other questions, comments? Public comment?
No, Mayor.
Entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move to approve city contract number 2021-040.
Second.
Motion and second. Please vote.
Passes 6-0.
Last item, E.
Approval of city contract number 2020-194A2, an amendment to city contract number 2020-194 with Cactus Asphalt, a division of Cactus Transport, Inc., for the fiscal year 20 pavement preservation project.
Good afternoon again, Mayor. Craig Dotseth, Public Works. So as Sarah announced there, this item is to approve an amendment to the city contract with Cactus Asphalt, a division of Cactus Transportation, Inc., for the FY20 pavement preservation project in the amount of $183,638.10. The work being contemplated under this amendment to that project will include the milling and paving of eastbound Smoke Tree Lane to correct a previous contractor's work and bring the pavement into the city's specification for smoothness. So the amendment is to the existing pavement preservation project that Cactus is doing for the city in many areas. We are working on about 16 miles worth of roadway in other areas of the community. And they've been performing work around the entire city with a very good outcome. With the situation where we're at currently, the condition of the work that was performed on the eastbound Smoke Tree Lane, this was about the only means we had to be able to accomplish this work prior to the winter, or we have to have all the residents in the area live with it through the winter, as well as we would have to live with potential dangers that we consider are part of it, associated with icing and the amount of undulation that's in that pavement. So upon the placement of the current asphalt, staff notified the contractor on the first day that it appeared the workmanship would not meet the project specifications. In order to have a full understanding of the magnitude of the deviations from the smoothness spec, Public Works contracted with a geotechnical engineer to perform rolling straight edge pavement profile measurements, profilograph. The subsequent report identified approximately 600 locations that do not meet the city's specification, as well as 185 locations that do not meet MAG specification. That's in a 6,000-foot stretch of the roadway.
Who was the contractor?
Copper State.
Copper State.
Previously known as Quality Paving.
So I guess they didn't get paid.
Come on. So here's where our report lists the 600 deviations and the 185 deviations. This is what the report looks like that we received back from our geotechnical engineer.
It's what it feels like when you're driving.
So on the center of this graph is 0, dead flat. The blue bar in here, hidden behind all the black squiggles, that is the specification, the city's specification that the asphalt was to meet. Mm-hmm. Every one of these black lines that protrudes above and below that blue section is out of that specification. When you look at every one of those measurements on like, these are every one of those measurements, every one of those squiggles. And you get down here in some areas, like right here, at 684 feet, it is over ½ an inch high. Okay, I picked a poor example right there. We'll go back here. 634 feet, it is over ½ an inch high. 6 feet away, at 640 feet, it is 0.6 of an inch low. Mm. So within 6 feet, we have 1.1 something inches of deviation. When they take and put all of that information into this graph, so this is the entire segment. It was done on 4 different days. So if we split this up and we look at day 1, right here, that's where we initially notified them that the workmanship was not meeting. Thanks. Day 2, appears that they tried a little harder. And then day 3, we kind of run off the rails, and day 4 gets worse. That's what our report brings forward. Also, one of the items that they provide for us is an IRI reading, International Ride Index. So the computer calculated an IRI for this roadway segment, and it equals an IRI that depicts a roadway that is more than 20 years old in regards to rideability.
In other words, you couldn't put a glass of water on your dashboard.
No. Or anything else. Staff requested, per contract documents, staff requested a proposal to correct the deficiencies from the contractor, who provided a proposal. Then there was a subsequent Zoom meeting, and ultimately a meeting in the field with both the general contractor and the proposed subcontractor. Contractor proposed using diamond grinding, followed by a fog seal to bring the surface into compliance. To give you an idea of what diamond grinding would give us, that is what was performed on Willow Creek Road between Embry-Riddle and the car dealerships. It was identified at the field meeting that the existing pavement placement has areas that are at least ½ an inch below the curb surface prior to consideration of the grinding process. And that it's pretty hard to fix that when you're already half an inch below the curb level. At the completion of the meeting, field maintenance identified diamond grinding would not achieve bringing the surface into compliance with the specification. Diamond grinding was the only process that the contractor was willing to offer as a solution. So then, again, following contract documents, contractor was notified in writing that their proposal was not approved and that their contract would be terminated. Notification is pursuant to the terms and provisions of the contract documents. And this is a short snippet from that section. In accordance with Section 109 of the specifications, if the contractor fails to replace defective work, to repair or resurface in a manner that is acceptable to the city and the engineer, the city may serve written notice upon the contractor of its intention to have the work performed by others. The city will proceed to have the work accomplished by others or by itself and deduct the costs thereof from amounts due the contractor. So that's what we are proposing to do here, is proceed with this contract amendment with Cactus Asphalt, correct that previous deficient work, and then pay for it from contract values that are there. That equals, we currently have about, I say, there's an invoice and contract retention from the previous contractor that equals about 80% of this cost associated with this. Then there could be the potential to look to make that, equalize that with additional requests. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Councilmember Brucey.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure we're talking about that almost a mile. Is that Smoke Tree Lane that goes through Prescott Lakes off of Prescott Lakes Parkway? We approved it in May.
That's correct. It's a little more than a mile, 6,000 feet.
Okay. And when something like this happens and we have a contractor that doesn't perform, I mean, is he like blackballed, or how do we proceed if he puts in another bid and we know that we've had a problem with him?
I can do this one. There is a concept called debarring, which prohibits future contracting with a contractor. City Prescott really doesn't have a debar process. So, but at the same time, the standard for these types of contracts are lowest responsible and responsive bidder. So if we deem, if this contractor bids again on another contract similar to this one, based on, and we look at past performance and we look at references, and we can deem a contractor not responsible, and then go with the next lowest bidder.
Thank you.
Councilman Blair.
Just a quick comment. How are they going to remedy that? They're not going to go all the way down to the base? Are they just going to go in and do a 2-inch cut down and rebuild, or how are they going to do that?
This proposal considers 1.5 mil and then overlay back.
Okay, and then have to adjust the utilities again?
The utilities are still down.
Oh, they
are covered.
Well, that's a positive.
Councilman Good.
I just wanted to confirm with the recovery that we expect, we would have a net cost to the city of about $37,000 or less. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Good.
Councilman Zishka.
Thank you, Mayor. Do you promise that we're going to be able to put a cup of coffee on our dashboard and drive down Smoke Tree Lane? It's got
The Cactus, the work they've been doing around the community has been beautiful.
Very diplomatic.
Or a bobblehead.
It depends on the driver.
Yeah.
They have assured
Bobblehead
us.
would look real good right now.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, so how are we communicating with the club and everybody so they get the word about what's going to happen in timeline?
There will be, through the communication
With the homeowners?
firm, there will be communication again.
And will that go pretty soon? Correct? Is that,
Yes,
all right, because we'll
very
be
soon.
getting lots of calls. All right, thank you.
We are as well.
You are.
Yeah.
Public comment.
No, Mayor.
Entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move to approve city contract number 2020-194A2.
Second.
Motion and second, please vote.
Passes 6-0.
This quote comes to us from Will Rogers. There are three kinds of men. The one that learns by reading, the few who learn by observation. The rest of them have to pee on the electric fence for themselves.
There we go.
Okay.